and welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records and talk about why I love them. Typically in an episode, what I would do is to choose an album from my collection, talk about the album, and break down one of my favorite songs musically, using nerdy analytical technique. But hopefully accessible nerdy analytical technique. Anyway, all of this to say this is not one of those episodes. A couple of weeks ago, I put out an episode in which I imagine an alternative hypothetical scenario in which the Beatles could reunite and put out an album. So it sort of laid out the conditions that would need to be fulfilled in order for this to happen. If you're interested in watching that, you can do so here. Not to spoil anything, but at the end of the episode, I chose a title and designed a cover, and as much as you guys all roasted me for it, I'm sticking with it, okay? And also, I'll have you note that few to none of you actually proposed an alternative. So if you would like to please take this opportunity to tell me what you would name a hypothetical Beatles reunion album, I welcome you to place it in the comments. I've lost track. What we're doing today is we're listening to the 4 songs of John's that I would choose to put on this hypothetical Beatles album. Today's songs are going to be taken from John Lennon's circa 1969-1970. And 2 of them are going to be taken from his solo debut album, Plastic Ono Band. Because of this, it's sort of impossible for us to suspend our disbelief for the fantasy. We'll soon find that it's music that John Lennon used to process his circumstances, and those circumstances were the messy split of a 12-year relationship. I think of Plastic Ono Band as a breakup album, and I find that the songs reflect that. They're sparse and bleak, and they're sort of the songs of a broken-hearted, depleted ex-Beatle. With that in mind, let's quickly learn some more about the album before we start breaking down these songs. I have a few points to cover, and I will be presenting them in bulletproof form. The first point is that the album didn't receive the overwhelmingly positive reviews that it fully deserved, which I think we should take as further reason to completely disregard contemporary reviews for music. The positive ones were okay, but the negative ones verged on cruel. Take this Guardian one, for example. It starts by covering how this album takes the self-centeredness of Paul McCartney's debut to an obsessive level. So, from jump, it's a double burn. Geoffrey Cannon, we aren't going to name and shame this guy, goes on to say, "He screams and cries desolation, bitterness, anguish. This is the album of a man of black bile. This is declamation, not music." I mean, to be fair to Geoffrey, he's not completely wrong. But I wouldn't say it's not music. That is not the consensus now. There is a very clear consensus on this album in this day and age, and it looks like this. Point 3. John Lennon, at the point of writing and recording this album, had recently done a course of primal therapy. That really comes through in the music. This is an album that deals with pain, abandonment, and screaming. Point 4. This album is not named Plastic Ono Band. It's actually named John Lennon / Plastic Ono Band because there was a sister album that was released at the same time called Yoko Ono / Plastic Ono Band, and while I haven't heard that album, I can say with some degree of confidence that I probably wouldn't like it as much as this one. Point, what are we up to? 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Count them. The core band for this album, this period of John's music making, is basically John on keys and guitar, Ringo on drums, and Klaus Voormann on bass. Klaus Voormann, of course, being the friend whom they met in Hamburg in their early days. By they, I mean these here Beatles. He went on to design the cover for Revolver. Anyway, Ringo really enjoyed the experience of recording this album. In his words, it was one of the best experiences of being on a record that I've ever had. He went on to say that he and John were psychic where the atmosphere of the album was going to go. I'm glad that Ringo got to have such a positive experience despite the background noise of the Beatle breakup. Happy for you, Ringo. Actually, John was pretty chuffed with this album as well. Let's call this point 7. He said, and I quote, "Because of my hang-ups and other things, I would only now and then specifically write about me. Now I wrote all about me and that's why I like it. It's me! That quote is from December of 1970. 10 years to the day, we're not going to talk about it. He, at that stage, thought that it was his best work to date, and he called it Sergeant Lennon, for obvious reasons. Although, to be fair, I get the impression that John Lennon would often say that whatever the most recent thing that he had done was his best work, and then years later denigrate it. I think it's very good. So I agree with December 1970 John Lennon. Those are all my points. It's time to talk about the music. Song number 1 that I would put on Beatles in Space. Maybe the more I say it, the more you'll get used to it and the less you'll hate it. This isn't necessarily track 1 on the album, but it's the first John Lennon song that I chose, and it is Mother. It opens with these very foreboding bells. Before the song even starts, it sounds like it's about death. We're off to a really cheerful start. While the song is ostensibly about the loss of his mother and the abandonment by his father, I think it is maybe subconsciously also about the Beatles, because I imagine he would have felt a great sense of loss and grief and abandonment over the end of his band, even if he was the one to formally announce to everyone that it was over. So maybe all of that just got wrapped up in everything else, and it brought to the fore these other older abandonment issues. In any case, he put it to music. When you think about it, a lot of his early adulthood, and actually younger than that, a lot of his early life was defined by loss. His dad left, his uncle died, his mother died tragically when he was in his teens, his best friend Stuart Sutcliffe died, another close friend and his manager Brian Epstein died when he was only like 26. That's a hell of a lot of loss for a young man. So he had a lot to process. Those bells at the top of the song toll for so long that when the song starts, it feels like a bit of a jump scare. You see what I mean? It's a surprise. Maybe this is a grim thing to say, but so was the death of his mother. It was a total surprise. It was a tragic accident. She was killed by an off-duty police officer. His car killed her. It wasn't deliberate. Like many of the songs on this album, it's very, very empty. A steady and not particularly flashy drum beat. Single bass notes for the most part. And these long, lingering piano chords. This album came approximately off the back of this very lush, heavily orchestrated Abbey Road project. It was about a year, but you get the idea. During the process of recording that, John did make it clear, especially to George Martin, that he didn't want all of this fluffy, fancy orchestration. He just wanted to make music that was raw and authentic. He didn't like messing about, as he called it, and he didn't like the pretentiousness, if you like. He wanted good old-fashioned, plain, solid rock. The hell with it, let's blast the living daylights out. He very much realized this desire on this song, on actually the whole album, really. To sidetrack briefly about the piano, he does something very interesting in this track, which the piano correspondent will demonstrate for us now. Hello, it's the bit where he's saying, so I... He goes... Recognize that? Na 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 na. Psychically connected. Because the piano is these sustained chords, the drum's very simple, and the bass is very sparse, everything in this song is in the vocal delivery. In some ways, on paper at least, this song is not his best vocal performance. Stay with me. He's pitchy, he's missing notes, his voice sounds a little weak. But if you have half a soul, none of that matters. John Lennon is someone who was reportedly very sarcastic and spiky, and he never really let his guard down, except allegedly around Paul's dog Martha, but that's not particularly relevant today. It's just a nice bit of trivia that I thought we could all enjoy. And yet, in some of his music, he is more vulnerable than many of us will ever be in our lives, and this is perhaps his most vulnerable song of all. The lyrics are pretty straightforward. It's a heartbreaking ode to abandonment. Mama don't go, daddy come home. I love that the first half of the song establishes a precedent which is smashed to pieces in the second half of the song. The beginning of the song is a blues, essentially. It's a blues about death. The second half of the song is 2.5 minutes dedicated to unleashing these primal howls that have always raised the hairs on the back of my neck and given me goosebumps every time I've ever listened to this song. When it happens, everything stops, and as listeners, we're forced to, pardon the wicked reference, hold space for John Lennon. It's immense, and you can't look away. Almost trips over itself. Mama, don't go. It's kind of shocking, in the same way that the rest of the track is really shocking. It's, as I said, 2 minutes of screaming that just ramps up and up and up until the end of the song is completely hysterical. It's almost regressive. It sounds like a toddler's tantrum. It's like inner child healing writ large. Every single scream chills a little bit more than the last. It is an immensely powerful piece of music. I mean, listen to some of these. They're so aggrieved. He puts to music what many people feel, but probably couldn't express. Because in this society, at least, screaming is typically discouraged. Mama, don't go! Deep breath, everyone. I remember the first time I heard that. I got this record when I was maybe 15 years old. I had no sense of what to expect. When I heard the album open this way, I listened to the whole thing and thought, what the hell have I just heard? It was very disturbing. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's a very disturbing song. Don't cry. You're on camera. It's John Lennon's pain. It's not your pain. Too empathetic. That's what this is. Yep. Next song. The next song that I've chosen is Hold On, which, interestingly, is what John Lennon has chosen to place in the sequencing of this album as track 2 after Mother. Thank God, because it is the most soothing, beautiful, reassuring track, perhaps on the album, and we all need that. It opens with this beautiful, tranquil riff. It's really lovely how Klaus Voormann picks up on the guitar riff and doubles it here. Lovely little detail there. The tremolo feels like blissful oblivion, and you know how this sounds already, but let's get the guitar correspondent in here to play that riff for us. I always found the bass notes at the top of the verse a little uncomfortable. It sounds like Klaus is playing the wrong notes, but I don't know, you be the judge. So the key is na. But he plays that note here. I should have gotten the piano correspondent back in, but she's gone home. Yeah, it feels like a mistake, but who knows? I love that John Lennon has written his own little reassurance mantra for himself and Yoko, and also generally the world. The chorus is very simple, but the chords are interesting. I suppose is true of the whole song. It's simple but interesting. When you're by yourself and there's no one else. Because the melody of the riff goes like this. Nope. It lands here. That's the 6th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think that 6th is what makes the song so placid. Feels like you're at a spa. Not that I've ever been to a spa, but, you know, people seem to like them because they're relaxing, so I assume that is what they feel like. So that's the first chord. The second chord is this beautiful minor seventh, followed by another minor seventh. And then we have another sixth. And then this beautiful creature. Isn't that lovely? He actually uses that chord in Woman years later. If you simplified the chords, they would sound like this. Whoops. Instead, he plays this lovely chord, this beautiful chord, this wonderful beast, this, followed by my favorite, that one. How gorgeous. All of that is contained in the riff. Also, I didn't go home. I just popped out to grab some lunch. God. I think that also the note choice may be... Let me think about this. Okay, I figured it out. It's because the chord that's being played is this one. And the melody does this. And in combination with the root note, with the bass, it sounds like this. Which is quite discordant. The song has this lovely sentiment, the just hold on, it's gonna be okay. And I have been known to sing this to myself when things have been difficult, and it has helped me. And you know, you can just supplant your own name. He sings it for John and Yoko, but you can put your own name in there, I'm sure he wouldn't mind. The last verse, in any case, becomes totally universal, where he sings this. Hold on, world. Personally, I feel that this song is pretty relevant today, and we could all do with singing it to ourselves every now and again for healing purposes. It's another song on this album that is indicative of the background roar of John Lennon's life at this time, but it also serves as a reminder, an important reminder, that you don't need to make it through this year or the next 4 years or climate change. You just need to make it through today. Just till the end of the day. And then when you wake up tomorrow, do it again. That's all. That's how it becomes all right. In one way or another. But yeah, just hold on. It's gonna be all right. John Lennon says. Of course he's dead, so what does he know? Take his advice. It's better for us to take his advice. Hold on. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Song 3 is a single. The song that we're going to be listening to now is Cold Turkey. I've chosen Cold Turkey because Beatles in Space needed a good old-fashioned rocker, and John Lennon could always be relied upon to provide. I find this song interesting. I personally have never experienced withdrawal, and from what I've read, it seems like the sort of thing that you really only understand if you have experienced it, so I am hopeful that whoever needs to hear this song finds some sense of solace in it. It's sparse like the other tracks that he was putting out at around this time, but whereas a song like Mother or Isolation from Plastic Ono Band are cleanly empty, this song is messily empty. We've got Eric Clapton on guitar on this one, and then basically just drums and bass. There is no rhythm guitar to speak of in the arrangement, just this filthy riff that actually reminds me of Let Me Roll It by Paul McCartney and Wings. Und Wingen. Die Flügel. Paul McCartney und die Flügel. Yeah. Blistering riff played by Mr. Clapton. John Lennon's vocals on this track, much like Mother, are very evocative. They're whispering and trembling and shivery. It sounds like he's ill. My body is aching. Love that little tremble that he puts into his vocal performance there. Bass line's quite fun for this one. We'll get the bass correspondent to show it to you. Bass! Of course, the song is actually autobiographical. He and Yoko had a brief fling with heroin.
As far as interpretations are concerned?
No, because
They are on all those levels, you know. Excuse me, I feel a bit sick.
And they quit cold turkey, and by all accounts, it was unpleasant for them. Again, as with Mother, he ends the song by vocalizing his discomfort, which is probably an understatement given the sounds he's making. He seems unhappy, but he got out the other side. So, well done, John. We commend you. I enjoy how the guitar joins in the howling at the end of the song. I made a note of this before I realized that it was Eric Clapton on this track, and of course he does the same thing on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Just an interesting little link there. Also, there's this weird little reversed bit at the end. I wasn't sure what that is, so here's what it sounds like in reverse. Last John Lennon song is Instant Karma. This song has George on guitar and also piano. There's a lot of piano on this track. John is also playing piano. The drummer, Alan White, is playing electric piano and also organ, and Billy Preston is also playing organ. Just a lot of keys. And this is a track that was fully produced by Phil Spector, which you can hear. John asked for 50s. That's what he wanted, 50s. And so Phil Spector put a buttload of echo on everything and created this small band wall of sound. I think that's why there are so many pianos. So it sounds huge, and there's this chorus of people who are apparently sort of randomly selected to sing the backing vocals of the chorus. I love this song. It sounds so bright and shimmery. This is the song that I've chosen to open Beatles in Space. I always thought that this would be a good album opener, but then I realized it opens with a count-in.
C4.
And so did their first album, Please Please Me. And arguably their best album, Revolver.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
I say arguably their best album because I could argue that any of their albums is their best album, except maybe Beatles for Sale. Sorry, Beatles for Sale. Let's not rank our babies, that's not fair. This album was very quickly released and recorded. In John's words, wrote it for breakfast, recorded it for lunch, and we're putting it out for dinner. I also enjoy the 2-chord lead-in, which I realized sounds a lot like Some Other Guy. Nod to their history. It's so bouncy and rollicking, and it is so well-intentioned and sincere. And as I said, John Lennon was such a guarded person, kind of sarcastic, and I really like how he leans heavily on that and then subverts your expectations at the last minute. Like this line, it's so almost naive and sweet. How dare you laugh in the face of love? It's very neat to me, also, that the verses are in second person. How in the world are you gonna see? And first person. When we get to the chorus, it broadens. We're talking about the whole world. We're talking about the whole universe. And we're singing in first person plural. Oh, we all shine on. I don't know if I'm ready to get to the chorus just yet, though. Yeah, let's go back to the verse. It does a very similar thing structurally that Happy Christmas War is Over,
So this is Christmas.
where it establishes what the song sounds like in the verse, and then it changes key and does it all over again, which, again, the piano correspondent is going to show you now. Turns out she was just at lunch. Our first go-around sounds like this. Until we get to... right? Then we switch to that whole pattern, that's an A, we switch to D and do the same thing again. Which is a perfect turnaround into our home key. Brilliant! Except at the chorus, he goes in a totally different direction. We go here. What on earth you think you are? A superstar it doesn't go back to here. It goes back to here. Well, we all shine on. Those are beautiful chords, too. We've got... I really love those. He emphasizes it in the melody later in the song when he goes, all shine on. It's actually really solid songwriting, you know? It sounds like a simple song, but he's doing some interesting things with those chords as our John Winston Lennon. John Winston Ono Lennon. Beautiful. Back to you. Drum fills in odd places. It reminds me of Animal from the Muppets.
Yeah!
You all know how much I love to shoehorn the Muppets into this show. He leans heavily on this expectation of his sarcasm. Who on earth do you think you are, a superstar?
Well, right you are!
Yes! It has this very psychedelic worldview that everyone is unique and special, and also part of a greater whole. You get a great sense of one's place in the universe. This is very special to me because I feel like it communicates very well my view of spirituality. Namely, that I believe in a concept of divinity, but perhaps not as it's traditionally defined. Rather, I think everything and everyone is divine, completely improbable, and verging on magical in combination. How absolutely wild that we should exist and have consciousness on a planet that perfectly sustains us out of billions upon billions. I mean, we have the internet. And so this song communicates all of that to me, but with a kick-ass rambunctious beat. I love the well-placed cymbals in the chorus here. It's actually very similar to what Mick Fleetwood is doing in Dreams. It's not at the top of the bar, it's sort of halfway through. That first-person plural thing with the choir of people behind that I was describing, it very accurately creates in music what is being described in the song. So this whole me and you feel of the verses are just sung by John Lennon. And then at the chorus, there's this huge, seemingly huge group of people all singing the same thing in unison. Actually, harmony. Let's have a listen. Harmony. Still, it's very inclusive. It feels very inclusive of the diversity of human experience. Diversity is important. Also, apparently George Harrison was conducting the backing vocalist. It just feels so bad for Paul that the other three were getting together and making music, and he was the odd one out. Talk about abandonment issues. Anyway, the last verse becomes fully existential.
Why in the world are we here?
Why in the world are we here? That's what I'm saying. It's a mystery. It's a magical mystery tour. This life that we get to live, this consciousness that we get to experience. How fortunate. How fortunate are we? And it's a nice reminder that we should use the time that we have wisely to love as opposed to fearing and intolerancing. You know what I mean.
Surely not to live in pain and fear.
And then the last line becomes totally metaphysical.
Why on earth are you there? When you're everywhere.
How lovely. What a beautiful sentiment.
Come and get your share.
Share. Be good to each other. And all of that hippie nonsense. Again, a reminder that we are not limited to our corporeal forms. We are part of the oneness of being. It can be easy to forget that, and that's why I find it helpful to have cats. I think one of John Lennon's great strengths is to be able to distill complex ideas into something that you can explain to a 10-year-old and enjoy with your body. What a great song. Ah, love it. That's it. That's our 4 songs. Let's get the whiteboard out. This is where I'm placing the songs on the album. I hope you can see that. Track 1 is Instant Karma. Track 3 is not Isolation. That's incorrect. I have to go get the Methylated Spirits back out. 1, 2, 3 is actually Hold On. There we go. That's better. Track 1, Instant Karma. Track 3 is Hold On. Track 6 is Cold Turkey. Track 9 is Mother. And as we covered last week, track 13 is Ringo's Bye Bye Blackbird. So there we have it. We'll have a regular Vinyl Friday episode next week, and then the week after that we'll be looking at Paul's songs for Beatles in Space. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the final frontier. That's it for me. If you enjoyed this episode or you would like to support any of the weird things I do, I will leave a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page, where you are most welcome to make a donation if you wish. No pressure, friends. Thank you so much to everybody who has made a donation or signed up as a member. You have my utmost gratitude. Sincerely. If you're curious about what any of my original music sounds like, I will leave a link in the description to that as well, and it will be updated shortly because I spent all of yesterday in the studio with my band, and we have another album coming out this year. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week. Have a great weekend! At the end of the episode. That was rude. I was about to say something before that yawn interrupted me. You know what it sounds like, but let's get the government correspondent? No. Here we go. Let's stuff the dust. Is that how they came up with that verb? And John Lennon could always be that fellow. God. This. Yep. John Lennon could always be relied. Beatles in Space. I'm gonna keep saying it. You know, like, I started to doubt my own choice, and I don't deserve that. First person plural. Blah. Blah.